I'm going to move to this place. Like I'm moving to a new house or a new city. And I'm going to immediately put down roots by buying a house before I've even lived in place. That is not how you should think about your move when you're moving abroad. We talk about all the time, like your first thing shouldn't be, how do I buy a house in the place I'm going to? Because baby, you might hate it. You probably hate the house too. Well, if you hate the city, you probably hate the house. Now what?
Hey, journeyers. Welcome to the Journey to Launch podcast. I'm really excited because we have two special guests on the podcast together today. One is actually a returning guest. Her name is Roshida Dowe. She was on episode 265, called How a Career Break Turned into Moving Abroad and Financial Independence. She was a lawyer and turned expat. So we talked more about her story then, but she's back on with her co-founder and partner in business, Stephanie Perry. A little bit about Stephanie. Stephanie quit her job as a hospital pharmacy technician to travel the world for 1 year, and she never turned back. She's still living her best life. She's been house sitting since 2015, is currently in Bogota. And then just to go back to Roshida, as I kind of alluded to in the title of the last episode she was on, was a lawyer. She also retired from that profession at the age of 39. I love that for you. And is now also living her expat life in Mexico City. And they're here to inspire us to open the world more to people who want to explore living abroad. And they're going to share a bit more of their story. They're also the creators of the Exodus Summit and community, which has now over 26,000 Black women as a part of this amazing community, where they host virtual and live events and workshops where they teach you, show you how you can plan your exodus, moving out of the U.S. or wherever you may be, to just living life on your own terms in another country. They also have the Exodus Summit, which we'll talk more about later. I was lucky enough to be a guest speaker a couple years ago, and their summit is now coming back October 10th to the 13th. You'll hear more about that because the topic is right in alignment with what we talk about, money. And the title of the summit for this year is More Move Abroad Money. Who doesn't want that? So welcome to the podcast, Roshida and Stephanie.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thanks.
Yeah.
We're super excited.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Roshida, you've been on the podcast before, but some people may not have heard your episode, so we're definitely going to jump more into your backstory. And Stephanie, this is your first time, but I feel like Roshida, since we met kind of online, your episode, it probably was a few years ago, before the pandemic, I think you came on. So that was a bit, but I was aware of you since then and your work, and I saw you growing your community and the Exodus Summit, and I just feel like it was a niche that was necessary in the world. And so I'm so glad that you continue on, and I'm excited to see this success. And Stephanie, I feel like I've started to learn more about you through, when I met Roshida and learning about the summit. But when I kind of looked you up, I was like, oh, wow, like she's also living her best life abroad. I know so many other women want to learn how to do that. But tell us more about your backstory. So you were a pharmacy tech. Can you tell us like how that started and where you are now?
I worked night shift in a hospital. It's what I was trained to do in the Army. I'm from Delaware, and I was living in Delaware. And my whole work life was designed just to get me from vacation to vacation, right? I had a job so that I could take vacations. But my job actually made it really hard for me to take vacations. It wasn't a terrible, work environment. But it was like a lot of people's jobs were trying to use my benefits, trying to access my vacation time and my time off was really hard. And so it was just easier for me to quit that job, save up some money first, quit that job and travel for a year than it was for me to use my vacation days and travel a little bit here and there. I decided that I wanted to take a big old jump because, every year you're like, I still have this many more years until I think I can retire. I still had, I was 41. I'm like, I still probably have 30 years before I can retire. So that job, it didn't stand a chance once I started thinking about what my other options were.
So you said, so did you make that jump permanently at 41 or later?
At 41, I thought I was leaving for a year. I would come back to work. I would make some more money. I would leave again. My plan was to be a serial job quitter, right? To take a whole bunch of mini retirements. Anytime I could save up enough money to not work for the rest of the year, I would do that. Because, I worked in a particular field where I could always get a new job. So that was my original plan. Go until I can't go anymore, come back, move in with my parents, get some more money, leave again.
No, I love that. And the reason why I brought up your age is just because, as someone who's also in her early 40s, right? Like, we know our life is just starting, even though sometimes I'm like, damn, I feel like I'm getting up there. But still, we're not. We're not old. And I feel like there are a lot of women listening who, whether they're younger and it's like you have so much time ahead of you to make choices and live your life, versus maybe you're in your 40s or 50s and you can change directions and do something different. So I think I'd love to hop more into there about that change of direction for yourself, because before that, like you lived a life, right? Like you had, possibly 20 years of this professional life. So can you talk
Yeah.
about, were you always interested in traveling? Did you have your mindset on this profession, and what started to change for you to see something different?
I always did like travel. We were vacation people. Like, we lived in Delaware and Ohio when I was a kid, and we went to Disney World every year, and we're going someplace. I was always into travel. One of my first trips out of the country was because it was solo, because other people backed out, and I was like, I don't care, I'm going. I'm going to Spain, okay? I'm going to Spain. Y'all didn't buy your tickets. I got my ticket. Ended up, my luggage got stolen in the airport, but I still went to Spain by myself. And being travel me was always more me than work me, right? Job Stephanie was a little bit grouchy, and I know deep down I knew I wasn't a grouchy person, but I didn't have the evidence until I was not at work, right? So work Stephanie was a little bit grouchy, always annoyed. And vacation Stephanie, travel Stephanie was like, oh, let's try new things. Let's experiment. Home Stephanie was very guarded. And I don't want to say very guarded, but I was more guarded with people than to travel and vacation Stephanie. So I always knew that if the more time I would have traveling, the more time I would take on vacation or whatever, the better things would be for me. I just didn't know it was possible to like live like that. Yeah, I thought that you had to be born rich to be able to see the world. And that wasn't my story. But I did know travel life was a good life, and was what ideally, like the dream version of me, would get to do all the time.
So it was always an interest for you. I love that. Rashida, kind of jumping to your situation, how did you make your first, I guess, test the waters of quitting your job? Because I know you were a lawyer before, and a high-paced, like demanding job. So how did you realize, and when did you realize that that's not something you could do anymore, and you also wanted to go abroad?
So, very fortunately for me, I did not have to quit my job because my job quit me. The company I was working for went out of business, and I was in the process of, and I hated that job. Deep in my soul, I hated that job. But for what I did, it was the only what I did was geographically limited, right? And it was the only place I could do the thing I wanted to do where I wanted to live. And so I stuck it out. And then they went out of business, and I spent months ignoring the fact they were going out of business. And then it was like, okay, it's time to start interviewing. And I was showing up very hostile to interviews. Very, very hostile. Like, why would you be asking me to do this work? Like I'm a first year attorney. Like I would be new to the team, but I am an expert in my field. So what is this? Right? Like I was not coming interview ready to interviews. And that's when I knew that getting a new job was going to because of what I was bringing, no matter what that new job was, it was probably going to feel a lot like the old job, because I was bringing a little too much of the like burnout, the hostility. Like my job had turned me in many ways into an angry Black woman. That's not who I am normally. but being in that environment all day long had turned me into that. Um, and so when they went out of business, I was like, I can get another job, or I got a severance. I can take some of the severance money and just go explore the world for a while. And I'd gotten laid off once before, a long time ago during the recession. Whew. And I spent the 6 months between losing one job and getting the next job in constant fear that like my house was gonna get foreclosed on. It wasn't, right? Like my mortgage was like $600. I was okay, right? But like the idea that like did not get a severance. So I wasn't planning for this to happen all of a sudden. It was like 2 weeks or less notice. The idea that I don't know when I'm gonna get a paycheck again, instead of the very first time I froze and I was really scared and I was like, I don't know what to do. And so like literally cut the cable, lights off all day, blinds closed, like living in that kind of like self-enclosed fear. And then the second time I was like, oh, this is freeing. So I went from like a layoff being really a fearful situation to it being a really freeing situation, in the sense that I was like, I know I can support myself for a year at least with the money I have. And I know I can get another job that I maybe don't want. And I know I have a skill set that's in demand and I can do it in other places. And so I was like, just go like, instead of being frozen in fear, go live your best life. Go do the thing you really love. I love to travel. Go do the thing you really love to do and then see what happens, right? I was like, told all my friends, I'm gonna go for a year, and then when the year is over, I'll figure it out. What's next? I'll figure it out. But I had to get out of that, like, there is no paycheck coming. I will be on the street in a week. That a lot of us get into when we don't no longer have a steady paycheck.
Which is a great way to kind of talk about the foundation that you had to be able to leave. Both of you leave or travel, take the risk and, take that break. I'm wondering the maturity level. Like I know that there's tons of women in your community doing it at different ages, but I'm wondering too if that, Roshida, I forgot if you spoke about this before, but that around the age you were when you were able to do that, because sometimes with age comes wisdom or just more security in self, because you've been through so many situations that okay, been here before, or I have more surety that I can handle this as you get older. Mm-hmm. So I wonder how much that plays into it. And then also financially, how well you were doing with the foundation of things, because I'm assuming you both were paid well in your jobs, and wondering about the debt you had, if any debt, and then how that helped you being ready for the opportunity of whether it was getting fired and getting the severance or taking sabbaticals and taking breaks, that you were prepared, like basically when life taught you that it was time to go, you were ready for the opportunity.
Mm-hmm. I was not well paid. I made $22 an hour. Right. And I knew that I wanted to save $14,000 to travel for a year. This not including, because I was not going to keep my home, right? So I didn't need to pay any back home expenses. $14,000, it took me 15 months to save that money. And I didn't have any debt at the time. I had already gone through paying off debt, and I never had a huge amount of credit card debt, relatively speaking, So I paid off my debt. My car was paid off, and I knew that I could live in Southeast Asia on $40 a day, and so it took me almost a year and a half to get that money together, while like basically working a part-time job at my job, right? Working a bunch of extra shifts and all the usual stuff, packing my lunches and cutting out all the extra expenses. It took me a while. But I had a feeling that it was going to be worth it. I knew that even though this was a significant investment for me, this 1 year of not working, this $14,000, and this leaving my job, leaving my home, selling all my stuff, because I got rid of almost everything, right? I knew that was going to pay off in the end. So I went ahead and jumped in.
Rashida, what about
Uh,
you?
for me, I left my job ended when I was third. I just turned right before I turned 38. And so when I say I retired at 39, 39 was a year after I went traveling. It's kind of when I decided that like, oh no, I'm not going back to work because in the year of 38, I kind of felt like I was still in the workforce, even though I was on a vacation from work, right? At 39, I was like, no, I don't work in that traditional sense anymore. I had a good foundation in the sense that, like I said, I got a severance from work. I used that, but I've been saving for retirement since I was 18, right? Like so, I've been saving for retirement for like uh the next phase, the non-working phase for a really long time. I did have for a while. I was over 200K in student loan debt. I had some significant debts, um, but I spent years focused on paying them all off. And so before I left, I had no debt. I'd paid everything off. And I knew I had enough money to last a year. My plan was to spend around $36,000 traveling the world for a year. And I spent that amount going to 40 something cities in like 23 countries back in 2018, 2019. It was the foundation was there, um, but I didn't need the foundation I had. I think that's something that a lot of us emphasize on is like the getting ready part, where a lot of people are just ready. The people that I saw doing this, I saw a lot of people in the UK doing like these breaks, and it would be like a waitress who goes to work for 6 months and then takes the next 6 months off. And in my brain, I was like, ain't that kind of irresponsible? Right. But here I go judging her, living her best life and doing the things that I would love. I would love to take 6 months off of work. Right. But we tend to be so focused on like creating the foundation, creating the strong base for what we want to do in the future that we're not paying attention to what we want to do in the present. And so, yeah, I could have done this a long time ago. I could have done this with student loan debt. You know what I mean? Like the I could have done it on $14,000 like Stephanie did. You can do it on a much less money and with much less money to spend and much less money saved than a lot of us think. It's just, is it something you think about? And if you think about it, is it almost too scary to do it? Which I think it is for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's interesting bringing that up because I could definitely see the over planning slash just depending on your risk tolerance, how you can use that, the preparation to stop you from doing the thing and making the big life change that you actually want to make. So I think there's levels to it, right? There's people's personalities, whereas someone who is very risk adverse, they're like, nope, this needs to be planned out. I need enough money. Also, I think obviously your situation, whether you are single versus with kids, and like that's going to take a lot more planning. But I do love the perspective of that a lot of us or a lot of people can do this a lot quicker or with less than what we think is necessary, which is why I think you guys having this community that you have is important because that is the point to hear from and be inspired from other people who you can hear say, wow, like I didn't even think of that as a option or a method, or you did it with that, like makes people open up their minds to a different path or something different.
Yeah, we are two Black women, both Gen X, both single, both no kids. And so sometimes people are like, well, what about if we have, well, I can't do this because I have kids. We have a community of 26,000 Black women who are doing this. A lot of them have a lot of kids, right? And they're still doing it. A lot of them are married. A lot of them have pets. So part of the reason that our community really works is because we're not just here telling you what to do or like, we did it, you can do it too, right? There are so many examples of other women who are doing the things the, that are kind of like dream worthy of the women who are entering our community.
That's right. And let that spouse support you for a while. Take a break, right? That's why you have spouses, right? Lean on your spouse.
I love that. Yes. Well, okay. So one of the things too, just I'm going back to when you made the decision. I know some of it was you traveled for the year and then decided not to go back to the traditional workforce, but in terms of attachments, like worldly attachments or things like a house and mortgage that you had to get rid of, even friends and family, how was that transition or being able to separate in a way from that? Was that something that was scary for you, traveling initially by yourself? What were some of those hurdles, or if not, they were not hurdles, but I just know that for some people that is something they're thinking about. Like they're attached to their home. Should they sell it? Should they rent it out and not have to deal with it? Or they have family where it's like, I don't, my family is here, like I don't want to leave them, or friends. So what were some of those hurdles and or things that you had to think through to get this done?
For me, my timing lined up perfectly, right? Like I was not in a relationship. Someone said they could watch my dog for me. My lease was over. Job was over. It was like the universe was like, "Girl,
Like telling you to go. Like this is
it's
your
time.
time.
This
This
is
is
like it's your pushing me out the nest, right?" But this is something we talk to people about all the time in our community. Like your people, your things, your people, your pets, those things. We're all going to be looking at them from a different lens, and we're going to be dealing with different kinds of situations. And part of the question is like, it's not how bad do you want it, but it's like, what are the what are the ways you can make your circumstances work, right? Like when I left Ohio and I moved to the Bay Area, I owned two houses in Ohio and I sold them both, and I didn't have a mortgage on either. The full amount on the house price for two houses in Ohio would not pay for a down payment on a condo in the Bay Area. Right? Like the house is a thing. We get attached to the house. It's hard to get away from. We all like we're told that real estate is so important to us, but like it's all fake numbers, right? Like it's all just dirt. If I had bought a condo, I would probably not have left because I would have felt like, oh, I got it. Like there's so much stuff to do. But once I get out of my head and how hard it is, it's actually not that hard. Like you rent it out or you sell it, right? Or you leave it open or you have a friend live in it or something. You know what I mean? Like there's so many options. Furnish finders. There's so many things you can do with a home that will either generate income or at least keep it safe for a while. But that's not a reason not to do. And the same thing for your pets, your people. Uh, when I was leaving, I went to see my dad and I was like, this might be the last time I see you. And he was like, yeah, it might be. And then he died like 4 months later. Very rude, very inconsiderate. Why would you do that? Um, but it was going to happen whether I was there or not. Like I said my goodbye. This may sound cold to some people, but that's like he'd been sick for a long time. I knew it was going to happen. I had to say to myself that like the situation I'm living in is not healthy and I need to go do something else. And there are going to have to be some decisions I make for my health and well-being that may not be decisions I would make otherwise.
I didn't have a lot of relationship attachments that I had to think about when I was leaving because I was in such a sad state in my life. I didn't spend time with my people anyway, right? In Delaware, my parents lived less than 30 or 40 minutes away. I hardly ever saw them. I worked night shift, and part of that was that. But it was also just, I was unhappy. I was in this little pit of pity. And, I was in a time in my life where I was looking back instead of looking forward, looking at all the things I didn't have in life, all of the things I wish I had done, all the mistakes I've made, all the opportunities I lost or blew. And so I was not a person who had attachments who were going to be so sad to see me go because girl, you're not a happy person and I wasn't doing well. And so I felt like this opportunity was going to change things for me in some way. And the attachments, whoever I was attached to, would want this for me, even though they didn't understand. My family and my friends, they didn't understand. Some thought I was losing my mind. Literally, my mom thought I was having a breakdown when I was like, no, the breakdown was a few months ago. You missed the breakdown. This is the recovery. This is the healing. This is the I was finding myself. I didn't realize it at the time, but this is the upswing. So attachments, it wasn't really a question for me because life had been so yucky that I didn't have that. I didn't have that concern. And then all of my stuff in my house and my car, and I was so sick of all of it. All of it was the old life. All of that stuff was the life that I didn't want anymore. Even though I only had the money to leave for a year, and I was pretty sure I was only leaving for a year. I got rid of everything because I want to come back to something all new. So I didn't have the attachment thing. I understand people having that concern, but also like, are those really things that you want to hold on to, or are you just used to them? Do you really want them in this next version of you, or are you just used to having them today?
It's the condition of where we live, the society we live in, and sometimes a lot of things what we're doing is just something that was told to us that we are redoing. And what I hear from both of you, which I love, is this radical self-care, and not in like that corny kind of like self-care like way, but like I'm putting myself first. And so many women, especially Black women, women of color, but Black women, there is a lot, whether whether you have a partner or not, like you're in charge of a lot of things, mental load for the family, even if you don't have kids, just like extended family or siblings or whatever that looks like. I just feel like this idea that you can choose yourself, and there may be people who don't understand or are upset, but if you're doing things for you and you're not physically harming anyone, and it's really just so you can be a better version of yourself and show up better in the world, that you deserve that. And to make that happen may take some planning and some thought, but you can do that. It's okay to put yourself first. So I love hearing those examples, or that it happened for you.
Yeah, it's more than okay to put yourself first. If the average life expectancy is 76 years or whatever it is, if you're going to live that long, don't you deserve a couple years where you do what exactly you want to do, right? Don't you deserve just a little bit of time in that space where you're the boss of you, right? And where you say yes to everything you want to say yes to, and you say no to everything you want to say no to. Don't you deserve a little slice of that life for you?
So when you guys were traveling, whether it was now that kind of year, both of you, I think it was a year that you had enough money to survive on. What were your plans after that to make money? Because already that's like when I think about, because I take breaks often in my business now or in just life. I'm just like, I'm just not going to do this thing. And then I'm already thinking about, oh, but how am I going to do that next year? Or how am I going to make that? How am I going to pay for that? So what did you start to think of? How did you start to think you were going to make money? And how did you start making money to help support your ongoing expat lifestyle?
I originally thought that I was going to come back, get another pharmacy tech job, work a little bit, do it again. But then I discovered a couple of things. I discovered house sitting, and I discovered virtual assistant work, or like just working online. Being a pharmacy technician meant I shot drugs into IV bags all night long. So I didn't really think about how I could make money outside of that, and how I could make money from anywhere in the world. But then, I had a little change in my pocket. Went to South Africa after the career break. After that full year, went to South Africa with a little money, and started virtual assistant work, started working online. And that really changed everything. Virtual assistant work plus house sitting told me I don't need a traditional job anymore. If I got a free place to stay and I know how to make enough money on the internet to eat, I do not need a job to tell me what to do ever again. That made me completely unemployable, right? If I was, on the verge before, that pushed me all the way over the edge.
For
What about you,
me,
Rashida? Yeah.
yeah, for me, I traveled for the year. My plan was to come back and get another job, just like the last job. I put all my stuff in storage because I was going to get an apartment like the last apartment and a job like the last job and take everything and live the same life I lived before. And about 3 months into it, I was like, I don't, I don't think I fit into that anymore, right? That is not a good fit for me, in many different ways. 6 months into it, I was like, imagine having to clock in, swipe a badge to get into a building. Ew. Because, like, honestly, a year of freedom will make you unemployable, right? And ungovernable. I am ungovernable. Stephanie be trying to govern me all the time, and she knows it's not. You can't. I'm not doing that. I'm gonna do it my way. Thank you very much, right? Um, so the idea of like having a boss like my old bosses, right? Um, and the work I was doing was not work I could do in like my own company. Like it was very much like I need to have an employer to do the work that I do, the specialized work that I do. But what happened was women saw me traveling and Black women saw me and they were like, I want to do this too. How can you tell me how to do it? And I was helping them and I was meeting with them and I set up a Zooms and I was doing this all for free. And then I realized if these women are seeking my advice, would they pay me $50 for it? Right? If I take it for free, will they pay me $50 for it? And the price has risen over time, but the price has gone up. But it was just that like, oh, if I have to block off this hour and put on pants and turn off the TV and have the Calendly and the Zoom to actually do all the scheduling, I might as well get paid for it, right? And that is what turned into a business for me. That was like okay, I'm providing a service that people want. And if I can do it for free, right? If they trust me with the free advice, they might actually pay for it too. And that's honestly how I see a lot of women in our community creating their own businesses. There's something they do, people turn to them for. What is the thing people turn to you for advice on? And how can you serve your community and yourself? So many times as Black women, we're told that like, all you got to do is like help everybody and don't worry about yourself. Just go out there and serve everybody, help everybody, be everything to everybody else and nothing to yourself. And that doesn't work for me. So I was like, I would like to serve these women, but I would also like snack money and gas money, right? I like to eat. So where's right? Like, so how can we make this a more equitable exchange? And the equitable exchange thing is something I really see Black women struggle with the idea that like, I have a skill and I'm going to charge my community to access that skill. You want lights on, you got to pay for the lights. Like everything, like we live, unfortunately, very unfortunately, in a capitalist society. Anything we want, we have to pay for, except the labor of Black women. And I don't think that's the way life should be.
I think also this idea that we have these innate and learned skill sets within us that have the ability to not just change the world, but also make us money is something that we should be exploring. And it's interesting because you don't always know what that is until you're free or until you start the movements. And so you take action, like similar for me, when I was working in corporate America, like me starting the podcast and what I did was really just out of being curious and trying something and learning about what I wanted to do with my life. And then it turned into me being able to quit my job. So I just think there's a lot of opportunity for so many people to like take the next steps, even if you don't know the final outcome, like you didn't know, right, that this would be where you'd be years ago. but just taking the steps unveils the next step. And sometimes it's so obvious, like you said, like there were the universe, God was telling, like everything lined up where it was like, this is the next, like I cannot make this any more clear. The sign could not be any more bright that this is the next step. And I feel that happens when you start making the movements and doing the thing and investing in yourself, that those next steps become more obvious to you.
Yeah, it does take movement, though. It does take some action, because there's a lot of messaging in the opposite direction, right? A lot of messaging that it's not worth it to try, or it's not going to work out, or whatever, whatever. And action, movement helps you shake that off, or helps you at least not put so much weight on those other thoughts that are coming into your head. If you're taking action, you don't have time to sit and listen to those thoughts that are like, oh, nobody would ever want this, or whatever, right? The first way that I made money after the virtual assistant work, the next way that I made money was house sitter school, right? It was teaching people to become a house sitter. You don't get paid to be a house sitter through most of the platforms, but people will pay you to teach them how to do a thing. And my brain would have told me that's ridiculous. It doesn't make sense. Who's going to pay you to teach them how to be a house sitter when you don't even get paid to be a house sitter? But absolutely, I would have been totally wrong, and I wouldn't have known that, except that I took action. I wouldn't have known that I was totally off base and totally misunderstanding what money is in the world, right? And how people use money and how people spend money. I was thinking about the way I had spent money, right? And the way I had been so tight with it, instead of thinking about the way other people use money to invest in things that they find interesting. And so, yes, it takes action. It takes you taking steps, because what's inside of your head is probably it's probably wrong. And you don't know it yet.
Until you do it, until you try. How would you say, so now that, how long have you been now just doing your own thing, Stephanie? How many years has it been?
Since September 2015, we're going on 10 years.
Wow, congratulations. And Roshida, what about you? How long has it been since you left?
Since May 2018.
Okay, so
So
both longer times, right? This is not something new. So I know in the beginning that first year was traveling more like for fun or for exploration. And now you are both seemingly permanently in your respective locations. Is this like where you both, Stephanie, you're in Bogota, Colombia, Rashida, you're in Mexico?
we're both people
Mm,
who still probably travel at least three to 6 months out of the year, I would say.
Yeah.
We're somewhere else, right? So I pay rent here 12 months out of the year, but and I know I'm here at least 3 months. Is that the best way to spend my money? Other people might have different opinions, but it's my money. I get to spend it how I want to. Um, I love having a home to come back to.
Yeah.
So even if I'm only here a week between trips, I love being here with my things, with my plants. And so yes, Mexico. I've been in Mexico City since 2019, so going on 6 years. It for now is a permanent place. That might change in the future, but my permanent place is also not a place I'm in, 180 days out of the year. It's less than that.
Yeah. Yeah.
How did you both decide on those places? So one of the questions I'd love to explore now is the places you choose to go, and especially for women, right? Women traveling by themselves, staying. How do you pick a safe space, a place where you can meet other people, hopefully see a couple other faces like you? What does that process look like, identifying those areas? And then the cost of living, right? That is something that's going to come up if you're trying to geo arbitrage any income you're making to pay for your expenses.
For me, I like a certain look, right? I'm not really a city person, so if I'm in a city, but I like the city amenities, okay? I like the accoutrements that come with living in the cities. So I like a certain look. I want a lot of greenery. I want to be able to get back to Delaware in a reasonable amount of time, so that kind of keeps me in North and South America, North, South, Central America, and the Caribbean was pretty much where I was looking. And then I just want people who seem like good people. I want to go to a place and feel like people are if not like sometimes people seem kind of exuberant. Like they seem really happy to see me when I walk in places. I want to feel that sometimes. I want to go to a place where people are welcoming and warm and where I feel like I can be in community with them. That's not always a thing from your research. That's a thing once you land in a place. So cost of living gets me to a place. And then the feel of it, the look of it, the reception, the attitude of people, the sound of the city, right? Those things help me say, yeah, I think I can stay here.
For me, I had visited. We help people make lists of what they're looking for in cities all the time. I always say like have your top five that you want, your top five that you don't want, and make sure your city matches that. I didn't do any of that. This is very do as I say, not as I do, because I'm a very vibey person. So I'd visited Mexico City a couple times. Every time I came, I just loved the way it felt. I loved the way I felt. It felt like a natural match. And so without thinking about anything, I was like, I think I'm moving to Mexico City. And then it was like, okay, well, what's kind of like what's what's the cost range, right? And where do I and it's a huge city. You can be anywhere in cost in the city. Um where are the black I know they're black people, so where are they? Right? Like it wasn't like I'm moving to a place that has black people. It was like I'm moving to a place. Now tell me where my people are, right? Like it was what is life going to be like? Do I like the grocery stores? I do. Do I have good healthcare experiences and outcomes? Very much so. Those are things that I kind of like dealt with after because the vibes were right. I will say that if any of the things that were important to me that I would put on a list now weren't things I could check off the box in Mexico City, I probably wouldn't have stayed here this long. But all of the things that are kind of important to me in a move, I can find here, right? It's easy to find. It's close to home. I can do all the things I want to do. Anything I want to do is accessible in this city. And so yeah, I'm like the vibes are right, and it's a cool place to be. I'm there.
Sign me up. Well, so do you recommend that people take trips to just once they make their list and maybe identify some cities that they're interested in, taking short trips and then longer trips and extended stays to figure out and really have the feel? Because vacationing somewhere or staying somewhere for just the weekend or week is one thing, but living somewhere for, months, years is definitely is different.
A scouting trip can be very helpful, right? But a lot of times people don't have the time and the money to take a lengthy scouting trip. A 4-day scouting trip may not be super helpful. Not that we wouldn't discourage it, but it may not be the most, helpful way to know if you're really going to like this place. I think more important than the scouting trip is once you get there, be flexible. If you have shipped 4 shipping containers of items and you've driven down 2 carloads of stuff, you're stuck, right? Be flexible. Come down with your 4 to 6 suitcases. And if you get there and this turns out to not be the place for you, you pack up your suitcases and you try someplace else. I would say a scouting trip plus packing flexibly, packing light, you're in a position to win no matter what. Whether you get there and you love it or you get there and you don't love it. Right? Rashida,
Yeah.
you're
Definitely agree with that. I think that um, scouting trips can be great, but not everyone can do them. Some places you can figure out in 4 days. Mexico City is really high altitude. If you get here and you can't breathe, it may not be the city for you. And that does happen to a percentage of people, right? They get here and they're like between the air and the altitude, no, right? Cool, right? You may go to a city and be like, well, people didn't feel warm and welcoming like Stephanie wants, and you can figure that out in 4 days, right? Um, but your best bet, because you're not going to know, even if your scouting trip is a month long, you're not going to know what, if you come in summer, you're not going to know what it's like in December, right? Your best bet is to pack light and be flexible. and tell yourself that like I'm checking this place out. If I don't like it, I'll go somewhere else, right? But the idea that like it feels, because I know it from America, it feels like a very American ideal, but like I'm going to move to this place. Like I'm moving to a new house or in my neighborhood or a new city. And I'm going to immediately put down roots by buying a house before I've even lived in the place. And I live here now and I have all my stuff. That is not how you should think about your move when you're moving abroad. It should be like you're going to college for a semester, right? That kind of like pack a couple things, see if you like it. You living in the dorms. If you don't, there's some other options, right? Maybe it's another city in the same country. Maybe it's a different country. Maybe it's a different neighborhood in the same city. But we tell people all the time, like if your first thing shouldn't be how do I buy a house in the place I'm going to? Because baby, you might hate it. And now you got a house. You probably hate the house too. Well, if you hate the city, you probably hate the house. Now what? Right? You're abroad. And now what are you doing? Right?
Yeah.
Being flexible. People talk about, the people who move abroad and fail. And I don't think there's any such thing as failing, but I think being flexible leads to success.
I like that. And thinking also through, I mean, there's so many topics, which is why you guys have your summit and community where you can dive in more into this. But I will say one of the things I kind of want to explore here is this idea of going to other places to live and, making money online, hopefully making good money online and then being able to pay less for your cost of living, how that relates to the community in which you are not immersed in or living in, right? So, it's weird because I'm going to use the word colonizer and I don't ever see us as like, Black women purposely doing that, right? But going to another place or another country and being able to benefit off of whatever our skills, our money from the US and whatever, that's a benefit for some people. How do we come into a community, into another country, even when we're talking about, maybe I know a lot of people, Bali is a place, or Indonesia, other places that are even cheaper cost of living, even the islands. How do you immerse yourself in a community without taking advantage of or taking from the people there in a way in which it feels good to now be a part of something different? Does that make sense?
First,
Yeah.
First, you're absolutely right that we could colonize, right? There's an assumption. Some people would say, well, you're Black, you couldn't be a colonizer. We absolutely could because we have learned from the best, which is the worst. We absolutely could. And we've seen it happen before. People can move to another place and decide that they want to push other people out. And that's absolutely a thing to have on our minds. Rashida is my tutor on this because she's been very thoughtful about it. She's lived in Mexico City for 6 years now, whereas I've been bopping around the world from place to place. I just be like, oh, I'm here now, I'm there now. This is my first time sitting still somewhere for a while, having my own, like paying rent. So I'm going to steal some of Rashida's answers, but I'm giving her credit in advance. So she makes sure to keep her money in the city, right? Make sure that her landlord is a Mexican person, right? My landlord is Colombian. My landlord is from Bogota. My landlord, I had to go give her some cash money just this morning. I walked 3 blocks and gave that money to Olga, right? She is Colombian. The keeping the money in the place is a way that we can make sure that we're not extracting. So yes, the cost of living might be great. Neither one of us is really living on pennies on the dollar, but we like nice things. But the cost of living can be great, and location arbitrage is a thing that we are doing. But how can we make sure that we are contributing and that the money that we're spending is actually going to people in that place instead of just being shipped back to the US or the UK or Canada or something else? Rashida's been very thoughtful about that, and that is why I have been thoughtful about it. That's why I asked, When Rashida came to Bogota with me in January, we looked at some apartments then. It was my first time stepping foot in Bogota, but I was like, I'm staying. We went and looked at some apartments, and that's the first question she asked the landlord. The real estate agent, is the landlord in Colombia, and are they Colombian? And that's been a really helpful way for me to think about all kinds of things, like even my little avocados. Instead of buying avocados in the grocery store, because I'm not sure what's happening, I buy my avocados from the man on the corner in the little cart. To a dollar here, a dollar there, thousands of dollars here and there for rent. How do I make sure that my money is not going straight out of the country?
So that's something that I think about all the time is like how can I best spend the dollars that I have in this community? But also I really try to focus in on what's going on in Mexico, what's going on politically in Mexico City, whatever things that are what locals are struggling with, and how can I be a better neighbor? Like we've had a water shortage for the past few years, and so it's really hard to have all this hot water and be like, but if I use a lot, there's less for my neighbor. But I do that, right? I take short showers because even though I've never run out of water, the city runs out of water, and me being in a place where I get water shouldn't mean that my neighbors don't, right? Like somebody else in the community does not get water. So those kind of things are things I think about. How can I be the best citizen I can be? And I'm not going to get it right every time. I'm going to you're human, you're going to mess up. But part of messing up is like understanding that you get to try again, right? And that like this one thing you did wrong does not make you a bad person. Online, there are contingents of people who, Mexico City has been in the news a lot about gentrification. There is a lot of people who, if you say anything about Mexico City, here come people saying like gentrifier, colonizer, blah, 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 with nothing to back it up. Just, you're here, you're not from here, so you're a terrible person and you must leave. Which, as someone who's been an immigrant my entire life, I'm like, oh, that's so ugly. Like it's so ugly just to kind of like online attack someone just because they're not from your country without knowing anything that they've done that is wrong or that is harmful. I understand that sheer numbers of foreigners is impacting the city, but attacking individuals instead of asking for a really solid rent control, right? Like instead of like talking to your government, instead of recognizing that landlords play a role in gentrification, just like tenants, regardless of where the tenants are coming from, do. These are all kind of issues that I have to wade through as someone who's lived here for a long time and is visible online in conversations about Mexico City. But I do my best, right? Like the sweet potato man knows me, the shoe shine man knows me. Like I am a part of my community. I intentionally do not live in an area with lots of foreigners because I want to be known by the Mexicans in my neighborhood. I want them to feel like I am part of their community. And that's not always easy, especially because, Spanish is not the easiest language to learn, no matter what anybody tells you. So I'm still
I was going to ask
6
both
years
of you
in.
this. I was going to ask how you guys are dealing with the language. Yes.
I'm still thugging my way through. But generally, in person, Mexicans have been so nice, so welcoming, so kind, and so patient with my toddler Spanish. So patient with the like, baby, that was not the tense you're supposed to be using. But I got you, right? And that it feels like a good place to be, and it feels like I can live here as a part of the community without being a colonizer, or with like maybe baby colonizer tendencies that like that aren't like impacting anyone, right? Like, I'm not asking restaurants to change things. I'm not, complaining because it's loud. It's loud, right? I'm just dealing with it. They're being part of the community, being immersed in the community, and knowing what's impacting them is the best thing you can do to figure out how to not be a colonizer abroad. And I would say, and caring, right? And as Black women, we tend to care about the people around us wherever we are. And so we have a little bit of a head start in that. Um, but if you're not, if you don't know what people are struggling with around you, it's very easy to kind of fall into the situation where you're taking advantage of that thing or your privilege and not knowing it.
Right. Right. Oh my gosh. So it's so much more we can talk about. But I do want to just leave some time to talk more about what you guys are doing with the summit, the Exodus Summit. It's going to be taking place October 10th to 13th. The theme this year is More Move Abroad Money. Can you talk about that, the importance of it, and just more about the summit itself?
Absolutely. So, like we said, our community of Black women is 26,000 strong. And when we talk about things, in the move abroad space, about getting residency in different countries and whatever, they're like, yeah, but what about the money? I need the money. I can't I can't take any steps until I figure out the money. So we bring in speakers, bring in Black women speakers who make money a particular way that would be helpful to women in our audience, and they come in and teach you how to start making money that way, right? Because once you solve that problem, the other problems are less problems, right? They're less problematic once you know how you're going to support yourself in a new place, which is, for most of the women in our community, not the way they supported themselves back in the US, right? It's, for most of our women, it's not a traditional job. Once that question is answered, everything else is less of a burden. It's less of a hurdle to cover. So Exodus Summit is all online. Black women speakers like yourself, Jamila, come in because they love helping other Black women get this success, get this win. And the women in our community are super receptive and very action taking. And so the summit is like the perfect storm of information and execution, which leads to the Exodus.
Yeah. We every year we have a theme, and back in 2022 we did our theme was Move Abroad Money, and every year since then the women were like, "Shall we do it again? Let's do it." And we have seen women who attended in 2022. One woman attended in 2022, and we did a group trip in 2023, and she was like, I made all the money for this trip from the summit, right? I learned everything I needed to learn. And it was like fall of 2022 and spring of 2023. She had enough money for a group trip. One woman immediately, I want to say within 2 months, doubled her salary, got a new job and doubled her salary. Because we don't invite in speakers who are like, look at me, I'm great. I've done things. Don't you want to do things too? We bring in speakers who are like, all right, grab your notebook, grab a pen, step 1, step 2, step 3, let's do it, right? And it's really important to us that women who come in identify things they can do and identify things they don't want to do, right? We have 17 sessions of information of different ways you can learn money. But we don't want you trying to make money 17 different ways. We want you to say like, number 1, 2, and 3 are things I want to check out. Number 15, 16, 17, no thank you, right? Like that don't sound like it's going to be fun, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's why we bring in a variety of speakers so that we can have women looking at different things they may have never considered, right? And saying, if I can make an extra 20K doing this, life is different, right? If I can make $50,000 doing this, my life would be different, right? And part of what we were talking about before with the geo arbitrage is that a lot of times for moving abroad, you don't need the money you're making now, right? One of our speakers years ago was working 4 hours a week and supporting herself and her son on 4 hours of work a week. And the rest of the time she just homeschooled because she moved somewhere where her cost of living was less and she wasn't working just to work. She was like, I'm gonna get the money we need and then I'm done. And then we're at the beach, right? And that's something that, imagine how freeing that would be, right? If instead of working for a 40 to 60 hour week, hello America, if you were like, I can work 8 hours a week and then it's me and my family for the rest of the time, right? Mm-hmm. That is the thing that is the start of a generational wealth that I want to see for more Black women, right? That time, we talk about the money, but we don't talk
Yes.
about the time and the joy enough,
Yes.
right? But like living a life where your kids are like, mom is always so like she's always in a good mood. She's always happy. She's all right, like she's always here for us, as opposed to what it feels like when you're getting back from your corporate job or your government job and you're unsure if it's going to be around tomorrow, right? So that's
Yeah.
really why we do this. This is our 6th year doing the summit, and we are people who like a life of ease. So we and this is a lot of work. So the only reason we do it is because we know it makes such a big impact in the lives of Black women and their families.
Yeah, I want to say, so if you're listening to this and you're like, all right, I'm ready to sign up, you can go to journeytolaunch.com/Exodus. That's EXODUS. I'll have that in the episode show notes also. But when I was a speaker a couple of years ago, I mean, it was very well ran. But what I really like too is the community aspect of it, because a big part of this journey is finding like-minded but different people that you can learn from and feel connected to. And I thought that was really impressive, the way you built that community, where you now get to interact with people based on what you heard, whether it was just in the summit or just because this community is online all the time, not just for the summit, but it's there. And so I just thought that was really good, because I think I stayed in the community for a bit even after. And I was like, if I was really looking to do this, I mean, I'm not, I'm kind of, I'm one of those tethered women in the US, but not in a bad way. I love my life, but if I had like I don't know, part two where I'd like my life was different, I didn't have kids or whatever that looked like, I'll be signing up. Like, listen, how am I gonna do then and do these things? Like, I just thought it was a great pathway. So I want to commend you for creating the community, creating the platform to teach other women to have options. That's what I talk about: having options, the freedom of choice, and having time as your most valuable asset, being used wisely. So once again, if you want to learn more about the summit, you can go to journeytolaunch.com/Exodus, EXODUS, for more information.
Yes, fantastic. Come, you're welcome. Welcome, please come. Okay, you're going to enjoy it. What happens is women come to Exodus Summit who are like, this sounds like a good idea, but I don't know that this is possible. And they leave Exodus Summit with a strategy and maybe an accountability buddy, right? Maybe somebody who can walk alongside you on this journey. When you attend an Exodus Summit event, you're not just getting that whatever you came for at the event. You're also getting a whole gang of new women in your life who are maybe a few steps ahead of you, maybe right beside you, who will make everything seem more possible.
And I just want to add, if I feel like I have to clarify this, because just because, so you're listening to someone, this is my podcast, right? And I know a lot of people who follow me are inspired by my journey in my life. And this is where I think about the differences of who you are as a person and lifestyle come in. And I know, like, for me, I've been able to craft a life of options outside of the corporate world where I am currently, which is why for me this is comfortable. But just because you have kids and just because you're married does not mean you can't do what we're talking about either. So I do want to clarify that, because I don't want someone to feel like, oh, like I'm tethered to Jamila, I guess I'll just not go. That's not it. It's just that I've been able to craft a freedom of lifestyle in New York, of all things, with 3 kids. And I just know that for some people that they can't do that because of whether cost of living and life. But I just know that whether it is by following through tips you heard here or going to the summit or the podcast, that you can craft a life that you want, that you'll be happy with. So explore, take the risk, and do that for yourself.
Yes. I will say that in families, it's usually the woman who's leading this, right? It's usually the woman who's like, I have an idea that I think is going to work for our family. So even if your husband's not on board, and a lot of times the husband is not on board, and the woman is like, look at this plan I have drawn up. Let's check out. I remember someone was like, let's just go check out the city. And then her husband went to Panama City. Her husband went to Panama City, and he was like, or went to Panama, outside of Panama City, and was like, why don't we live here? And she was like, because you ain't been reading the notes. I've been right. You did not read the chalkboard. That's why we don't live here, right? So sometimes it
Right.
really is um, women taking the lead on this one thing and saying, how can I outline it, set up a playbook, do whatever, and talk to the family in a way that they will understand and come to enjoy it. And then, find a place you guys will all like together. Next thing you know, you live there.
Right.
Right?
Ah, all right. This was such an insightful, amazing conversation. Thank you so much, Stephanie and Roshida, for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jamila. It was a pleasure.
Yes.
More
it
than a
was.
pleasure.
Thank you.